The subject of the tape this afternoon is Mrs. Agnes Adachi, a survivor of the Holocaust in Budapest, Hungary. And I'm going to ask her to join me now. Agnes, please sit down. We have some questions for you this afternoon. You are to us what the Japanese call a living human treasure because of your memories of Raoul Wallenberg and what went on in Budapest, Hungary. Mrs. Adachi worked with Raoul in Budapest and knew him very well. So we have selected a few questions to ask her this afternoon, and I'm sure we'll get some very interesting answers for them. Would you please describe the conditions in Budapest before the war?
Yes, I can easily do that. It was an always very exciting city. They always called it the real Paris, music and the opera and paintings and writers and great life always. Even the dethroned king of England was coming there to go with Mrs. Simpson. So it was a very exciting city and a very well-to-do city. I can't tell that for the whole Hungary, but Budapest was a beautiful, beautiful city. And really we did not feel much of anti-Semitism, if you know what it is that Jewish people, they didn't feel that too much because of the great culture in that city.
What are your memories of the beginning of World War II?
Well, I was a very lucky child. I was in Switzerland at the beginning of the war. I lived in Geneva, and I was just on a wonderful trip with other students in France when we came back in September. And they had several great meetings, and people to relax, they all came to the beaches. And it was September 3rd, when in the middle of the wonderful sunshine, the music stopped and the microphones blared that the Nazis overrun Poland.
Yes, I remember hearing that too.
And most of the people were Polish on that beach because there was a Zionist Congress at that. And they all came there to take a rest. And I was a young girl, and with frightened eyes I saw that these poor people, some of them not even dressed, they were running to telephones and everywhere to find out how they can get home. And this was the first shock that there must be a war because Poland was overrun by a foreign nation. And right there I promised myself, if I can do something in the world to save people from whatever will happen in the world, I will do it. And I thought I'm going to stay in Switzerland. But I had very dear friends of mine who kept on telling me I should go back to Hungary because the war can't stay that long, and they're sure that nothing will happen to me and I'm the only child, I should go home. Well, in the meantime, we left a lot of money with this very wonderful friend out in Switzerland, and unfortunately everything disappeared during the war for my very best friends. But these little things happened, so that's why they talked me into it to go home. In January was my father's birthday, and in 1940, the war was up. I went back to Budapest.
Oh my goodness.
But I found Budapest right then too still very exciting, and nobody believed that things could happen in Poland. Nobody believed what happened in Czechoslovakia. We just were like the Americans and the British. We did not believe that it can happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
And you do not believe in things. You're hearing and you say, no, it can't happen here. Look at the people, they are wonderful. They're still showing American films.
Yes.
But then it went, this was in 1940. By 1942, it was sort of very bad manner to talk English. And therefore I was a very definite child. I was teaching English. That time I spoke, and the young people don't believe it's the King's English, with no accent whatsoever. And I was teaching English, and my first student was the Congressman Lantos, who probably you all heard the name.
Yes, I have.
And in that time, his wife, now for so many years, she was 9-year-old, not even quite 9. And I taught her my English. And we proudly walked on the street. She looked like Shirley Temple. She had beautiful long locks. And we talked real loud English on the streets. And we were never accosted because they thought we were English. We didn't look Jewish. We didn't look anything else but English. So we did speak English. And she did learn English. Maybe not the King's English, but she learned it.
Yes. And how did World War II come to Budapest, Hungary then?
Well, World War II at the moment didn't come, but slowly, the Romanians who could run away from Romania came in and told us the horror stories, then the Czechoslovakians, then the Poles, those who were lucky or unlucky to come to Hungary. And we began to worry, but still did not believe, because in Hungary it cannot happen, and we had an Admiral Horthy was our regent, and who was, we didn't have a sea, but yet he was an admiral. And I think young people like to hear that, an admiral without a sea. But he was, well, if you want to know that, he had his Jews who were helping him. And he always said, I was always an anti-Semite, but I will never let anything happen to my Jews. And therefore, we sat quietly, but we began to worry. Then in 1943, it just happened. And it happened on a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful morning that I will never forget. I was working that time in a very famous hotel, the Hotel Ritz. And we had a wonderful manager who spoke 13 languages. He was a Yugoslavian, wonderful old gentleman. Mr. Hilton learned from him. And that's how he opened all these hotels. And I was lucky enough to work there, and it was early morning when a very excited neighbor of ours came in and telling my father that he just heard on the BBC, but we were not allowed really to listen, that Horthy will go now with the Allies, and he's coming right on radio and will say that. And my father went in quickly and brought out the champagne and the glasses, and I looked at him and I said, Papa, I don't believe you, please don't drink. And my father says, you young people, you always think what you think. We know better. All right, he poured the champagne, and Admiral Horthy came on the radio, and he said, with great happiness, I am telling you now that we are joining the Allied forces. That was his last word. And suddenly, the cut and the Nazi anthem came. And I dropped my glass, and I ran out, and it was a beautiful day outside, sunshine, beautiful. It was March, I believe. And I saw thousands of aeroplanes, and I said, the Americans and the British are here. I was running all the way to my hotel, and as soon as I walked in, the porter says, go to Mr. Marencic, that was the wonderful leader of that hotel, the manager, and he took me in his arm, and he said to me in French, he said, child, please go home. Admiral Horthy was already taken. There was a coup. And what you see outside are not Americans and British, they are all the Germans. I made it home, and my father looked at me and says, you're right. And that's how our war started. Well, it was shocking, more than sad, because now we found ourselves in the same predicament. We didn't believe that the other people went. And somebody was going to us that this will not going to end because the Britons and America doesn't do anything. And that was the truth.
Right. Well, they
It
were
was
fighting the war.
1943, about, I think it was March or April already. And for quite a while, the Germans came in with a list and collected their people like they did everywhere else. But somehow we were still in our apartment and nothing happened except I didn't really dare to go out too far, so I had a little spinning wheel and I was spinning. And my mind was dreaming like every young girl would dream where I can go and that this will be all over in no time.
Yes.
the mail has brought me 2 letters. I used to write poems at that time. And under a presumed name that was Rome, that meant Rome, London, and Paris, short. And as I wanted it to be published, and I sent it in. We had a newspaper like the New York Times, and I just sent it in. Please do it. And on my greatest surprise, and that morning, the one letter I opened was from the editor of the paper, who was one of the greatest writers of Europe, handwritten to me what was for me far more than if you publish it. And he said, by chance, your poem came to my hands, and I am swear that it is mine, but we cannot publish it because the censor wrote about it, and I keep it my greatest thing. Kiss your hand, madame, as I said in Hungary, and signed it. And I screamed because I thought this was more than publishing something.
Yes.
And the other little letter was very tiny, and on the back it said Swedish legation. What was the Swedish legation meant for me? And I opened it up, and they asked me if I would come and visit the legation. Now, that was already dangerous then to go. And I had no idea why they had me and how did I get there. My cousin had a wonderful boyfriend who was a Christian and had a big black Mercedes-Benz. And he said, I'll take you there. And he put the Nazi flag on his car, put the Nazi uniform on, and he took me to the Swedish legation. And then I got more surprised. I walked in, and there was Feranger, who was then the first secretary of the legation, and Minister Danielson, who was the ambassador, and the Hungarian counterpart of the secretary was Mr. Mezek. And very cordially, he said, well, we have a great surprise for you. You are now a Swedish citizen. And I stood there, I said, I beg your pardon, sir. He said, well, your fiancé asked us. Now, there is a little story. In Hungary, when you were a Girl Scout, and I don't know how it is here, when you speak languages, they ask you, would you help with the tourists in the summer when you have time to show them Budapest? Mm-hmm. I spoke a lot of languages already then. And one summer, maybe 5 years before, I was going with a Swedish group who spoke English, and I showed them Budapest. And one young man kept on corresponding with me all those years. But I was young and I had billions of boys around me. I didn't really take anything serious. But what the ambassador explained to me, that the Swedish king, that wonderful Gobelin maker, who played the tennis, Gustav V, he placarded all over Sweden that people who had friends, relatives, or business acquaintances in Hungary would they please come to the foreign department, and they tried to help. In the meantime, he wrote letters to Admiral Horthy to do, and that's why he wanted to go with the Allies. He promised him that Hungary will be taken care of after the war, if eventually. So my boyfriend, or fiancé, I didn't know, he went up there and he said, I have a girl who I wanted to marry, but because of the war, we couldn't marry. And if there wouldn't be a war, she would be my girlfriend, my wife already. So please, she's a Swedish citizen. And they gave me this paper, but I then lost as a Swedish citizen. And they said, and now you're going to stay here in the embassy, be taken care of you. And I really thought I was in a dream or I was dead, because this all cannot happen to me. And I said, but I have my parents. He said, we send a note to your parents, and eventually we try to help them. So my dear chauffeur, he went down, and they said, don't go back home with him. We will send the secretary down to your parents. And what they did, the Swedish secretary, one of them went down, and they gave a note to my parents, please give me a change of clothes and toothbrush and all that. I was a guest of the embassy for 3 whole very happy weeks. Well, happy so far that inside I thought maybe I'm doing something wrong because I have parents home. But when you're young, you want so badly to live and to hope that you can do something. So I thought,
and they wanted you to live too.
And they wanted me to live. So I didn't go back. We had very illustrious other guests in the embassy, but I didn't know probably all heard, and maybe the children too, of St. George, professor who just died a few years ago, just a year ago here. He was not a Jew, he was a Christian, but he was very much anti-Nazi. And he just got the Nobel Prize, and the Germans wanted him. So the embassy had him too up there, but then they had to give him a disguise and a different name, and he went somewhere else. But there were other people there who were saved. There was a wonderful young woman with her two little boys. Her husband was Swedish, and she got stuck, and she was Jewish. So they had to help her. They eventually went out with Paranger on the last train, and then Per came back. But they went to Sweden. Nevertheless, 3 weeks after, my young chauffeur came back, and the man with my immediate return to the city. He said, in the meantime, my parents had to move out of the house because the Hungarian Nazis were far, far worse. That was the arrow close. Then it was the Germans. The Germans said, do it, and they did it twice as good. So what they had in their mind, if they have every second house in every street with a big Mogendorf that has a Jewish house, the Americans will not bomb because they would be afraid. Well, they were wrong because the Americans knew exactly where the headquarters were, and they bombed the headquarters and left everything else separate. Anyhow, my parents had to move out, and luckily enough, my grandmother's house was still, that became a Jewish house, so my parents moved in there, some friends, with some aunts and cousins, and the ambassador said, no, we cannot let her go, we are responsible, she's a Swede. But I broke down, I said, look, because he said that they can kill your parents, like reading names and your name is still on. And then we killed my love, my cousin. So it was very hard, back and forward. So I said, I'm going back to my parents. And I went down with the second. He went with his car, and the ambassador said, please go down the subway or the streetcar. And that young man was sitting on the other side, never talking to me. He just wanted to see exactly which house I'm going. And so he blinking at me, and I went in with the promise that when they allow us to go out in the street, that I can call, please call us. And I wasn't down more than maybe 2 weeks. And I called, and they said, please come up at once. Some new development happens. I said, if I can find someone to bring me, I'm coming. And I went down on my knees to my chauffeur, and I said, please, Mike, just once more, I won't stay there. He says, promise. I said, I promise. So he put me in the German flagged car, and he took me back, and that was her life.
Oh, my. I was just going to ask you how your first meeting with Raoul Wallenberg.
Well, that was the first meeting. I got up there very neatly and very frightened in a way. And he looked at me, had very beautiful dark eyes, and really looked so you to somehow ask him, could I trust this person? But they told him about me before that I'm actually now a Swede and so forth, and he looked at me and said, would you like to work with me? I was sent to Budapest to save people. And I said, yes. But how? I still had a scar. And they all started to laugh. I said, why are you laughing? He says, you take care. And right away, they gave me a little paper saying that I am now, and this is the paper maybe the young people would like to see. This is the paper they gave us with Raoul's signature, and they put my picture on right there. I don't know if it is possible to see. This is a working paper, and it says in 2 languages, German and Hungarian, but the Swedish crown is on, that I am employed by the B section of the Repatriation Office and the Swedish Red Cross. And with this paper, I had to go by myself to the police headquarters and had my star removed. And I walked into this police chief, who everybody knew what an enormous Nazi he was. But he also knew something good, and evidently the Swedish government or Raoul Wallenberg had bribed him or something, because he took me in his arm and he had tears and he said, I'm so proud that I will be the one who cut your stomach. And you did. And he said, go and do whatever you have to do. And I walked out. While I walked out, I heard somebody screaming there. It was but I didn't turn around, and I made it all the way home. And from then on, then Raoul said, now, we'll give you another paper and go to the Department of Housing, because what they did, suddenly there was housing, and people just stole people's apartments and people's houses, and their paintings, and anything you want, they took. I had a couple of girlfriends whose beautiful paintings are hanging now in the museum in Budapest. So by that time, I really knew how Raoul is such a man who is not afraid of anything. And when he said, go to this house department and get your apartment back, I thought to myself, if Raoul can do anything, I can do it. And I went with the nose up, very well dressed, like nothing can happen to me. And I walked in, and I sort of half threw that paper. What said, please give her. And it wasn't even on my name, it was on my father's name. But this man, he looked at me real dirty, and I said, oh, now. And he signed the papers. Here. I walked out. Again, I heard a few little cat calls, but I said, oh, well, never mind them. Just with the nose up, I walked out. And I walked right home, to my old home, went into the superintendent. And the wife started to cry. Oh, Auntie, you are okay? I said, sure, I'm okay. And I said, I'm here, I would like to get the apartment back. While the superintendent, who lived on my father's money for years, said, oh, my daughter already got this apartment. Whereby the wife says, our daughter already has an apartment. I thought he was going to kill his wife, but then couldn't say anything. And he said, well, I can't give it to you unless you first go to our lawyer. I said, sure, I go to the lawyer. Now, here I have this whole trip again to a lawyer, but of course I have no star. I figured nobody's going to stop me. I have my working paper from Raoul. I went to the lawyer, and it's the same thing as the man. The first thing was, he said, I give it to you if you promise me something. I said, sure, anything. Just like Raoul, anything. He said, you will tell the Russians that I was good to the Jews. I said, sure, I'll tell them. Oh, I walked out, I didn't even know his name anymore, But like Raoul, he promised anybody anything. Just do it, what I'm telling you.
Yes.
He signed it. So I got back, and okay, we're going upstairs. We had an apartment, I think here you would call it a three-room apartment. We had 2 bedrooms and a big dining room. There was no living room, but that's how we had. And we had a maid's room. Now, it was out of furniture, everything. And so it comes, and that one
Where
little
was
room,
the furniture?
that's what I didn't know until we opened the door. That was a small room, a maid's room. And that was sealed and locked. And the superman there took the seal off, opened the door, and everything was in there, even our paintings. And for a moment I thought, oh my God, maybe it isn't as bad as I thought. But then he changed my mind very fast, and he said, I think I will even with you yet. But this time I saw the ball is in my court, and I said, okay. Well, yes, he almost killed me after. It was very easy to do when the Russians were there. But in any case, I got my apartment back, and then I was in there maybe a week by myself, all alone. And it was very interesting to see. Right then, the bombing started, the Americans and the British, every day. And we always had to go down to the basement. And I didn't know anyone anymore. Everybody was a different person. So many people probably had Christian papers, and many people just moved, So we didn't know anyone down there. And after a week, I got my parents' paper to these Schutzpasses, and that too the children should see. This was Raoul's great idea. I think this will be very hard. This is my father's. And this was Raoul's idea. You see, Raoul asked the permission. Actually, he ordered the ambassador to let him go and speak to the government. because he wanted to take people out of Hungary. That time there were still rails available to go to Sweden. And what he wanted to have one red cross train after the other to take these 280,000 Jews who were still in Hungary out. And the government said, Mr. Wallenberg, you can take 5,000. So Wallenberg said, thank you, and went home. And he said, that's ridiculous. If you take 5,000 now, that will never allow us another, and maybe there is no tomorrow. So I have to think of something else. And the something else was this. I don't know if you all know Mr. Wallenberg was not a diplomat. He was an architect,
Right.
who had an American education at Ann Arbor, Michigan. He came out cum laude, best architect.
Class of 35.
Class of 30. And I met one of his old classmates, and they loved him. They said Raoul Wallenberg never told them that he was rich, but he was always the heart of the party. And he always was full of stories, and he could imitate anyone, anytime. But he was also very serious because he already heard what's going on in Europe and he didn't like it. So that was his idea. He was an excellent draftsman. So he said, why don't we make a protected pass? Now these two you constantly hear passports. These are not passports. They also said that it made the people Swedish citizens. It did not. They also say that it made the people to take the Star. That is not true. It is only true that it was a community protective pass. And it wasn't a fake, because that they also say, because everybody's real picture and real signature was on, so it cannot be fake. Fake was that later on there was this wonderful Polish man who already was underground in Poland 3 years, and then he came to Hungary and he found this man and he did his copies. And Raoul met him, and you probably saw that in the film.
Yes.
And he wasn't quite, so he's alive still. He's a Tishman, he's in New York. And Wallenberg said, I don't like what you're doing, but if you save people's life, you do it. That was the fate. And it saved life. Maybe another 100,000, but we don't know.
Yeah.
It saved the people. So this said, again in the two languages, and I think later on they, no, on this one they had no Russian on my working paper. It says on this paper that the above himself and all his belongings is protected by the Swedish government. And if eventually we collectively can go to Sweden, then this pass will not be valid. And that's all it says. So nowhere it says it's a passport or it's a Swedish citizenship or anything else, but it could save people's life. Could you see that now? Then I take
It was a brilliant invention.
It was a brilliant invention. It was, of course, in the Swedish colors of blue and yellow.
Yes.
The crowns too.
Yes.
And of course, it was always Mr. Danielson's signature. He sat with us night and night to do that because we collected pictures. That too, it was allowed about 10,000, and of course we made 30 to 40,000 of these passes for people. From what I think 100,000 people did survive.
And the
parents survived.
And the Baroness Kameni convinced her husband to honor
The
those.
Baroness Kameni now, this was a wonderful young lady who was married to a count in Budapest who became a great, great Nazi. Like most of, well, half of the aristocracy, yes, and half of it was not. And they tried to say that there was a love affair between Raoul Wallenberg and her, but that never has been.
No.
Because she really loved her husband and she was pregnant with his baby. And but they said that in this film, you all saw it. I don't know if young people have seen that film
On television.
that he goes on the train with her. But
To
that
say
is not
goodbye.
true because I was the girl who got them the flowers. And Raoul Wallenberg and Per Anger went out to the train station together, handed her the flower, kissed her head, and they left, and she left. That was the real story.
Oh, that's good to know.
You know, so, but they have to glamorize, and it makes me very angry because it was unnecessary.
Well, It made the story a little interesting for people that don't know the real story of Raoul
Yeah, but they
Wallenberg.
should know that real story.
Yeah.
Because people do terrible mistakes. There was one lady who invited me and Rabbi Bruce Cole, who is the middleman between Christians and Jews at ADL in New York. She invited us because she has written a Broadway show on Raoul Wallenberg and she wanted to see us. And I sit down and the first question from the lady was, tell me, what did he do in the 2 years? How much love affairs did he have? And I said, lady, he wasn't 2 years in Hungary. She said, he wasn't? I said, no, 6 months. And in 6 months he didn't have time to make love affair. He didn't even have time to sleep. Oh my God. I said, well, you better don't try to tell this story because that man does not deserve such a and she never wrote a story. But that's what people do, you know, their mind is everything. Some other person came to me and said, no, and what else did he do in Germany? I said, in Germany? He has not been in Germany or Austria. He was only in Hungary for 6 months.
Yes.
And that's very hard to explain to the people that this man was a superman. I'm telling that to little children in the kindergarten because they asked me to talk to kindergarten children. I said, how can I talk about them? And when I was shocked. How can I tell a story about Raoul Wallenberg? But the only way I could, I tell them. Oh, Superman, all they want to know. But when I will tell you about the Superman who had no cape and no gun.
Yes.
Love in his heart and the kids listening. And I'm telling them a story
Good
about Raoul.
comparison.
And they understand. They don't know. I don't tell about death. I don't tell what's happened. I'm just telling what wonderful person he was and how he loved children and how he tell them the stories and how he barked and meowed and did everything what other animals do to make the children laugh and the children laugh and the grown-up laugh. Because he did that with us. In the worst time, Raoul would suddenly see that our face was long. He would just stand there and imitate Hitler or Eichmann or whoever. And we all started to laugh. Because that's how he was. I think he would hate it if somebody would say that he was a saint. Because he was. He was a human being with full of love of people. No matter whether the people were Christians or Jewish or black or white, whatever. It was love. Whoever asked him for help, he was there.
You should tell us some of the forms that help took. And what did he do?
Everything. First of all, he didn't sleep. Number one, he didn't sleep because the Nazis were after him. Eichmann wanted to kill him several times. And there is a very cute story, it's also a real story. He invited Eichmann for dinner, and he forgot. And last minute he remembered that he invited Eichmann for dinner, and he had to call our third secretary, Lars Berg, I don't know if you ever knew him, and said, Lars, do you have food and drinks? I invited Eichmann. Well, yes, he had it. And they had an evening with Eichmann. Eichmann came with all his guns and everything, and Raoul was with an open shirt, opening the window to him and saying, hey, look what you do to Budapest. You already lost the war. So this was one thing. But Eichmann wanted to kill him several times because Raoul was in his way.
Yes.
And Raoul said, I am not enough in your way. All right? So he didn't sleep, but his mind had to be working non-stop. When he heard that the people were taken, for instance, barefoot or with shoes in the very, very cold winter. We had the coldest winter in about 40 years in Hungary. So cold that when a horse was killed, it froze immediately. And we had horse meat for weeks to eat because we could cut it. Yeah. And in that cold weather, the Hungarian Nazis with the Germans have marched people, that was the death march, from Budapest to the Austrian border. Now, Susan Tabor, whom you already had, he did not be in that death march. He was in another one, and I tell you a story about that. But the death march. So Raoul turned to the Red Cross and to some of the Feranger almost always went with him. And he asked a couple of diplomats, please come with me. And they went, and Raoul had a huge big black book, and he stopped the march, and he screamed and pulled children off and put them in. We had maybe 3 Red Cross trucks, so about 1,000 people could move back. And in the meantime, he was screaming in German, how dare you have to take my people? And he opens this book and says, Mr. Kraus, Mr. So-and-so, on the way home, and he saved 1,000 people. And on the way home, Raoul Wallenberg turned to him and said, Raoul, I didn't know we had a black book with name in it. And Raoul said, oh, you didn't know? Here it is. And he opens up and it was completely empty pages, never all cut.
Oh.
You see, you have to think fast. There
Yes.
was no time to tell what shall I do. But the Germans were always people who ordered. And they saw somebody there with a black book with the names. All right, take it, go.
Yes,
You
yes.
see? The other time, 250 young men were taken in a truck. They said they will only work in the Budapest area. And of course, the trucks went out. Raoul heard it, let's get after them. And the German, that time it was a German officer, and he said to Raoul, well, I don't care what you have. If we find one man who doesn't have the papers, we kill him on the spot, okay? Raoul Wallenberg looks at him and says, okay. Now, it so happened that 249 had, because Raoul pulled out the driver's license, insurance papers. The German couldn't read it. They cut off. The last man caught his eye. Raoul right away knew, he didn't know what the man's name is or anything. And he says to him, John, you forgot your paper again? I have it. The man came down, he handed him something. He saved 250 people. He lies with whatever you want, he did it. And one night we had this extremely beautiful moon evening. Why the British and the Americans didn't come that night too? Well, we don't know. They were busy somewhere else. It was a gorgeous night, and we also, well, I think I forgot to tell that within 2 weeks of Raoul's arrival, we got about 35 to 40 houses as a present. Somewhere it's written that we paid for it. No, the government didn't pay for it. The Jews and the anti-Nazis has given those houses just to save it for us. And the Swedish flag went out on those houses. And that's where we came for these people, these passes. They came in there, those who didn't have
The safe houses.
The safe houses. Now, they were Swedish territory, and they're not supposed to come in and take the people. But the Hungarian Nazis did. They came from down the cellar and took the people and killed them on the street. And we had young Jewish boys who looked very ill, and they were dressed up in Nazi uniforms, taking care of it. But the Hungarians, they were doing what they were told by the Germans to do. So this, and we also, like Raoul, had to move from one house to the other all the time, because they were after us. So our office was moving to embassy, back from the embassy, other legation. This night, we were sitting in Buda. I don't know if any one of you ever been in Budapest. It's divided by the Danube. And the Buda side was with all the villas and all the embassies. So this time we were in villa in Buda.
Is Buda
Because
towards the
Budapest-
east or toward the west?
In the
Towards
Royal-
France?
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay.
That's,
We'll have to
I
look
really
that
don't
up.
know. You have to look it up, please. I'm sorry. And Pest was the one where we had the opera house and the concert halls and the apartment buildings and the hospitals and whatnot. Now, a day before, Raoul heard on the radio that all the young women between the age of 15 and 25 have to go to a sports palace, and they will have to make trenches in Budapest. Of course, we knew very well that the next stop will be putting in a train and take them to Auschwitz. So Raoul turned around to all of us and said, all of you must have young aunts, sisters, let's have the pictures. And the minister had to sit with us in the night. We had already candlelight only because we didn't know when they come and bomb. But as I said, it was cold and beautiful and snowy and moonlight. And here we were writing these passes, and the ambassador was signing each of them. And we had to deliver them all by 3 o'clock. Now there was a curfew for everyone, not just Jews, everyone. From 9 in the evening to 7 in the morning, no one was allowed out in the street. Okay. Now, suddenly Raoul, from who knows from where he saved people, he came unshaven. But when he walked in, he always smiled. How are you all? How far are you? And he said, we are almost finished. And he said, oh, that's wonderful, because we have to deliver them all. And then as an afterthought, he turns to us and said, I forgot to tell you we have new neighbors in the other villa. And of course we all looked up. He says, don't look up, it's only the German headquarters. So coming out of, from, we didn't care. Oh, the German headquarters. So we finished our work, and I happened to be the first one to be ready. And before that, Raoul had to pull me apart from a young man who is in this country today, and I won't mention his name because they might know him. He was selling our passes, and I found out. And I was like a wild cat. I got him down by his hair, and I hit him, and Raoul walked in and says, "What are you doing to the man?" I said, "He's selling our papers and they're free." But he had to pull us apart. And after I walked out down, I said, "But I am ready with mine." And I walked out, and I will never forget that feeling when you're so young, you suddenly forget there is a war, there is a curfew. It's nothing. There is beautiful moonlight, and I am taking papers to save the people. And I delivered all 500 papers. And then I went home, and I sat down on my bed, and just then it dawned to me what I had done. And I said to myself, why were nobody out on the street accosting me? I mean, where were the Hungarian Nazis? Where were the Germans? Why they didn't kill me? And then, like Raoul would think, I said to myself, because they are cowards, they wouldn't dare to be out in the street in the night, in the moonlight, and I went to sleep. And I only woke up in the morning that my two best girlfriends had been thrown out with this paper from the camp. That was They were born both in, no, they were born in Hungary, but they went back, their mother was German, and then they came back, and the German officer heard it on their accent that they were German, and he said to them in a very ugly language what they can do with this paper. But the kids turned around and ran, and he never shut up. So they made it. Like today, they're both grandmothers in this country, here. But that was one thing. Then Raoul was so fantastic in learning names. Once he heard somebody's name, that was it. We had one cocktail party in the very beginning, and he had 300 helpers. He never missed a name or never made wrong. I had two sons, and I'm still mixing their names up. Not Raoul Wallenberg, he would never do. He remembers everything. So, first thing he did, the Hungarian Nazi Party had their parties in each little corner of Budapest. And by that time he had some Hungarian aerocross men who knew that they lost the war, and they came to Raoul and said, "Can we help you?" And Raoul said, "Sure." He said, "Then will you help me after the war?" He said, Raoul said, "Sure, I help you. Just you help me now." Promise like I did to the lawyer. Same thing. Sure. So these guys, he sent them out to learn each leader's name. Okay? And Raoul learned it, and good. He had a hospital. One day, in this big, big snow, he walks into his hospital and he finds 3 young punks, because these Hungarian Nazis were 13 and 14-year-old kids who couldn't read or write, but they told them, use the gun, you know how to shoot. They did it. It was fun. So here stands the 3 kids with the big gun, and the doctor stands there with his hands up, and the patients are crying in bed. And Raoul hits one of these kids, and the gun falls, and he screams. He couldn't speak much Hungarian, but whatever he could tell them, he says, "Get out and bring me your leader." And the 3 kids left. And this was a very, very cold and snowy day. 2 minutes after, one officer walks in, and Raoul says, "Simon, what took you 2 minutes to get here?" And the guy looks at him and says, "Mr. Wallenberg, how do you know my name?" And Raoul says, "I know everybody's name, and I don't know what you're doing. Why are you sending kids here to kill us? You know that we need medicine. And now, not tomorrow. And you better go and do it, because I just heard that by mistake you have killed a Gestapo officer, and they're looking for you. And if you get me the medicine, maybe I can help you." Useless to say, the guy left at once. And the doctor puts his hand down and he says, "Raoul, what did you just do?" And Raoul says, "I didn't do a thing. But it's snowing outside. Did you see a speck of snow either on the kids or the officer?" And the doctor says, "No." He says, "Okay, so they're next door." He said, "Yes, but how did you know it was Simon?" He said, "I didn't know it was Simon. But I chanced it. I knew that's the leader's name, and it was Simon." He said, "Okay, did he kill a Gestapo officer?" And that by our Raoul sits down on the floor and like it's nothing, and he laughs. He couldn't stop laughing. And the doctor says, don't laugh, answer me. He said, of course he didn't, but he killed so many people, one of them could have been a Gestapo officer. So you see how he had to think all the time?
Yes.
Now, in the film you saw, for instance, when the ghetto, where there were 70,000 people.
Yes.
And you saw how he saved that, but it wasn't quite so either. We were all in the office when Raoul heard about this. And it so happened that two of our Red Cross girls were in there too, because they just delivered medicine and food. So we had 70,000 plus 2, right? 72,000 people. And Raoul said, I have to do something immediately. He picked up the phone and said, listen to this. And all of us, of course, when Raoul did something, we looked at him. He was our big brother, our best friend. And with a very heavy German accent, because he was wonderful. He says, this is Lieutenant whatever. I want to speak to General Ismail. Of course, with this German, nobody doubted. And when he came again, he does like this to us, and he says, General, this is Raoul Wallenberg. Now, the General couldn't hang up on him. And we hear this conversation, and he said, I don't believe what you're doing, General. I understand that you are one of the most highly decorated First World War officers. And you will kill 70,000 innocent people? I can't believe that. How would that look on your papers? And he must have answered something that Eichmann told me, because Raoul starts laughing and he says, Eichmann left town. Didn't you know it? I had lunch with him yesterday. That was, of course, a complete lie. And the man must have answered, I didn't know. He said, now you know it, and you better pick up the phone and cancel the killing, because if not, that I, as a diplomat, promise you that you will be hanged right before your office. In the meantime, he lied the same thing to the Hungarians, and they canceled because they heard that the Germans canceled, and the Germans picked up, and that's how he saved 70,000 people. So you see, he didn't mind how he had to lie. And you have to know that lying is ugly. But when you save people, you do lie. Because that's the only way to get something out. You have to lie, you have to cheat, because you know that's the only way you get the person back. And you have to be quick thinking. There is no other way. It wasn't always like that for Raoul. For instance, he had this beautiful, very, very beautiful orphanage. We had to, one, the whole thing survived. The other one, they had 79 children. Now, I am afraid you have not called her here yet. She's a wonderful lady, Dr. Vera Goodkin. And she is one of the heads of the New Jersey Wallenberg. She has been saved by Raoul twice. Once she was in this orphanage. She has a long story, and I don't want to tell her story, but she got the scarlet fever. And by chance, the 17-month child was sent to a hospital with false papers, because in Hungary you have to be sealed off when you have an malady like
quarantine.
So she wasn't there. That was the first time. While Raoul was out saving other people, the Hungarian Nazis came. They killed the guard outside, and they went in and killed all the children. Just to shoot them down. No reason, right? One little kid went under the chair. He didn't know his mother was alive, but the mother said before they parted that if anything happens to you, try to escape. So the kid went under the chair, and these Hungarians were such cowards that didn't look under it, just quickly killed. He survived, okay? And he's today in this country called 70. When Raoul came back, and we heard this, that was the very first time I saw our friend going down on his knees. And he was crying, at least 10 minutes. And then suddenly he got up, and he was like this 10-foot big. And he said, I'm going to find out, because I want to save the young. And I was quite young then. I didn't understand either what he meant, I want to save the young. And once we had a chance to talk to 5 minutes while we were waiting for a Red Cross car, and I said, Raoul, explain to me, what do you mean you want to save the young? And he said to me then, I want to save the young by telling every child that there is no difference between people and I befriend him. And then it doesn't matter, black or white or yellow or Christian or Jewish or Buddhist, it has to be a good person. And if Agnes, if I will reach that point, that children on the world, all over the world, will hold hands and look at each other as human beings, maybe we had no more war. And that still I didn't understand. But as I grew, and as I remember back all Raoul's little stuff, what he did with anyone, never asking, I said, he's right. And we're going to make peace. Maybe not in my life anymore, but my children will make peace. Because my children are like that. I remember when my son called home from Columbia College 2 years ago, and he said, Mommy, I want to sit it for divestment of Africa. You don't mind, do you? And I said, no. Only I want you to remember one thing. I was, because he always said, you and Raoul did it. I said, we were in a war. And it really didn't matter whether we live or die. But you are not in a war. And two things I don't want. I don't want the police to beat you up, and I don't want you to be fingerprinted. Whereby my young son says, Mommy, you can bring me out of jail. I said, I can bring you out, but I can't take off the fingerprints. So just remember. And he did it, and I was proud of him. Because he did it, because Raoul Wallenberg would have done it. And I think Raoul would be proud of him, because he did it. But then also we had the night when there was no moonlight, and it was the coldest winter, as I said. We had icicles in the Danube, what we never had before, a real big one. And the Hungarian Nazis decided this is a marvelous time, 3 nights in a row, to put a rope for 3 people and just shoot them into the Danube. Because this way, the middle falls in, the other 2 has to fall with it. Raoul heard it. He said, outrageous, let's get down there and bring them out. And this was the first time he didn't ask just the Red Cross, but he turned to us, a few mortars, and he said, how many of you can swim? Well, I was young and I was the best swimmer in school. I said, I can. I never even thought that I have to jump into the icy Danube with the hat, with the clothes, and the boots, and the gloves. But Raoul Wallenberg said, let's save people, go save people. So we went in the dark, no stars, no nothing, all the way on the left. All the way on the left, we had about 3 trucks, very quietly, with a couple of nurses and doctors who we found hot soup, change of dress. And every time the Hungarian shot, we fell into the water. And thanks God for the icicles, the rope hung out to the ice, so we could pull. Well, we didn't save more than 50 people, but if there is no Raoul Wallenberg, we haven't saved not one. And I really didn't believe that we did this until a few months ago. I spoke in Vineland, New Jersey. And when I was finished, the gentleman came up to me and said, I am one you saved from the water. I said, no, I couldn't. He says, look at me. I got a shot just in my hand, and it's still there. And he said, you fall in or you jump into the water, and you heard somebody saying, save me, I'm alive. And you fall, and it's me. And then I remembered, I didn't remember him, but it did happen. And it did happen to Mr. Anger. I don't know if you told it.
No, he didn't.
Well, it happened to him much later, when the uprising in Hungary came and the Russians were in 56. Then Per Anger was already secretary in Vienna. And he figured when the people came out with the boats from Hungary, those who came out, that why shouldn't he do the same thing Raoul did, save the people out of the water? And he went down with a big flashlight to the Danube. And suddenly a boat comes up, and a lady comes out, and she sees Per Anger there, and he runs to him and says, Mr. Anger, you saved me from the Nazis, now you save me from the Russians. And it's a shock for all of us. And it happened to me another time too. We were, I had tonsillitis, and I'd been in a Hungarian doctor's office in New York, and his waiting room was his living room, and people had to come down the steps who lived in his house. And an elderly gentleman came down. I was reading, and suddenly I hear his voice, you saved me, you saved me. And I looked around, and sitting in New York, you don't think of all this. And suddenly this old man is down on his knees, kissing my hand, and I said, what are you doing, uncle? Because we all call the old people uncle. And he said, you saved me. I said, I didn't save you. Mr. Wallenberg saved you. No, you did it. But it turned out that his people came up to the embassy. And even in the wartime, this man came 2 minutes after 3 and he banged the door. And I happened to be there and opened the door and I said, can I help you? He said, 4 more, please, here are our pictures, just 4 more. And I said, look, we are closed. So I closed the door. I said, just a minute. I went to Ambassador Daniels and I said, please, Ambassador, just these 4 more. He said, no, it's too late. I have a date. I said, please. So he signed the form, gave it back to the man. The whole family was saved, and he was the brother-in-law, I don't.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh, Agnes. What was the last time you talked with or saw Raoul?
After this Danube incident, then I happened to become ill. I guess that cold water wasn't that good. But I never saw him again.
Yes, because he was taken on January 17th.
Now you see, in January, when the Soviet came in, they came on the west side, and we found the German guns that were all lying on the ground like this. And they went to Buda, and they were still shooting across from there. So it took quite a while. Actually, February 17th, that whole Budapest was taken by the Soviet Army. And I left Hungary on February 28th.
Yes. And where did you go after World War II?
Well, it wasn't even World War II, it was still World War. 45
Yeah.
January was still World War after May.
Mm-hmm.
But very shortly I tell you, this one lawyer who worked with us, with Raoul, he came over on a boat because the bridges were down. And he came to my house and he said, Agnes, you have to say to the Swedish embassy. And I said, how?
Yes.
And he said, well, there is only one embassy in Europe left, the Swedish embassy, that's in Romania. And the Romanians were already liberated by French, English, Russians, and Hungarians. And you have to go there. And my parents, no, she can't go. And I said, of course I can go. I have to go. They saved us. That's the least I can do. I said, why? What happened? And he said, they were taken by the Soviets. He never told me that Raoul wasn't with them. In retrospect, I always think that whether this man was not somewhere in a bad way to want it bad for Raoul. But I can't imagine. He's not alive anymore, so I can't ask. Anyways, I said, well, how do I go to Romania? He said, oh, the Romanians are allowed now to repatriate. So you go to the Romania. I give you the papers. So he brought me some false papers. I had the false Romanian papers, and I had my Swedish passport in my pants. Don't ask how we got there. It took us 3 days. Then I couldn't go from the little Romanian town to go to Bucharest. You had to have special police allowance. But I had a girlfriend of mine whom I knew for a long time, and she got me the papers, and I went to Bucharest. And there I saw the ambassador, who came up with a long list of people whom the Swedish government was looking for. One was I. My fiancé was looking for me. I said, here I am alive. And in 8 days, the embassy was down. Mine was found. And then I asked Peranya, I said, where is Raoul? He said, don't worry. We will come.
Yes, because everybody just expected that the Russians would take
That was
us.
it. And that was it. And then well, the Swedish government was lovely. They kept on giving me money with the promise that when I get married, I will give every penny back. And we had a lot of fun there too, because I didn't speak much Swedish. I could speak a few words like milk and bread, and thank you so much. And one day, maybe I didn't have the right papers yet. One Romanian officer stopped me on the street with papers. And I showed him the Swedish paper and took me to the police station. Of course, I couldn't speak Romanian, but I spoke Hungarian, but I didn't let on that I speak Hungarian.
Mm-hmm.
And with all gesticulating and telling them, I finally wrote down the Swedish embassy number. And Mr. Reutersberg was the ambassador, very frightened old gentleman. He came and I could see him absolutely gray in the face. And all I could do is like Raoul Wallenberg. I started to swoon these words at him. Mjölk, bread, tack så mycket, and I could see that the color comes back. And so he he shot something back at me again in real Swedish, and I kept on saying words. And without a word, they let me out. And in the car, he says to me, how did you come with this idea? I says, would you have brought me out? Otherwise, I am a Raoul Wallenberg girl. All I could remember to shoot out. They didn't understand my Swedish. I have no idea what I said, but I got out. Then he gave me better papers. And so then I was sitting in Romania, and then we had those other 7 Swedes who were stuck in Hungary. They came down too with the embassy. And we were supposed to go with the embassy to Sweden. And we were all at the station. We heard Ploesti, that was the place that they bombed all the time because it was oil there. And that's where the trains left from. And we were all out there. And I started to get out, and last minute the came and said, those 8 cannot go. And that's how they went home alone. 8 days. They had the shades down. They could never look out. Did Tarek tell you that story?
No.
They couldn't look out, but they got caviar and vodka for 8 days. They never looked out. And when they arrived, the Swedish ambassadors not heard about Raoul.
Yes.
And then after more than the war was over in May, and for the world of it, I cannot remember how I celebrated. I don't know. But the war was over, and we were still in Bucharest, and then suddenly we got the word that the next morning we can leave, and we left on a British military plane sitting on the place where before the guns were. And we got to Bari, Italy, where we were then prisoned. But this should be in my book, read it. We were in prison, we were a month there, then we were a month in Rome, and then we went for a month to Switzerland. And then after that, I arrived. October, I was already in Sweden.
It's so ironic that you ended up in Sweden and Raoul ended up in the Soviet Union.
And nobody believed me, you know. When I got to Switzerland, I had a big family there, very prominent family. And I thought, this is such a beautiful story. You have to talk about it. You have to tell it. And my uncle, who was Russian, born, my aunt is a Hungarian, but the family, everybody, they looked at me, and when they thought I don't hear, my uncle said, you better take the charge as a psychiatrist. She must be crazy. She's wild. Then I went to newspaper people, and they all laughed. You know. So I climbed up, unfortunately. I've never stopped. In Sweden, I asked for permission because there I got a wonderful job. You know, the other great man was Count Benedok, who went to Auschwitz and Dachau and brought his sick people in. And they opened the most beautiful sanatoriums and places to rehabilitate these people. And they needed some people to go around and talk about Sweden and Swedish literature. I got a key to the Royal Library.
Oh, my.
Because they had the books from Selma Lagerlöf and Stendhal translated in German. I didn't know a thing about Sweden. And I was going around and giving lectures in these camps. And I had to do it in French, in German, and in Hungarian. And I asked the permission that to the Hungarians I could talk about Raoul Wallenberg. And that was the only time I was allowed to talk about it.
Tragic, tragic. And what are you doing now? In
But
this
now,
part of your life?
in this part of my life, I am telling children and grown-ups the story of Raoul, and that all of us can be little Raouls, because we have all good in ourselves. And children, especially, I want the children to know that they have a big friend, and that is Raoul. And Raoul is still over us all. And if the young people understand how beautiful it is to look at your neighbor and help and love, and that's what I'm doing now. Just try to have Raoul Wallenberg's name in every household.
Yes.
And I think up till now I succeeded pretty well. Because I cannot bring him out, I cannot do more. I am beginning to be a tiny bit of bored too. So all I can do is talk to children, write little children's story about who Raoul is or who Raoul could be. And I know we have a Wallenberg school in Brooklyn. And the children done beautiful things. There was one little boy who never listened home. His grades were bad. Everything was bad. And on the end of the year, and I were giving $50 always for a Wallenberg award to a child who did something humanitarian. And now the principal is giving it for 5 children. I don't care what they do. If it's for children, $10 is also a lot of money, plus the award. This little boy, who has never done anything in his life to anyone, his grades went up, and he's walking and all day. He did 3 times a week a blind all day, because he said, I can do it now. So if I can change some children, just 5 kids in every school, then we have 5 better people in the world.
It's wonderful, and who will not make it more goosebumps.
But it shouldn't be goosebumps, because it's such a beautiful story that there was a man like this. If he would have had 10 of him, then we wouldn't have had that Holocaust, maybe we wouldn't have had Hiroshima, we wouldn't have had a lot, and we wouldn't have Holocaust what we have now, because they wouldn't let it. And if you don't ask the child, of course I'm telling children, to you parents say, don't talk to the black one, or the black one says, don't talk to the white one. It's a wrong idea. There is no black and white. There is no Jew and Christian. There is good and bad. Period. You have 2 children, and the one can be very bad, and the one can be very good. And I can't hate the bad one either. But the idea is that Raoul always found a way to make somebody better. I mean, myself, I was a little kid, not that young, but what did I know of life? But I saw he was a man who doesn't have to do it.
That's right.
He was a neutral citizen. He was a Jew. He was a non-Jew. Why does he have to come into the war and enjoy it? He did enjoy what he was doing. Because when they took him, the Soviet took him, this was one Red Cross man who met him when he came back the first time. It's not like in the film. He came back once and he said, I have 2 Russian officers behind me, and they invited me back, and I don't know if I'm going as a prisoner or as a guest. This was the real story. But on the way home, he found a little old lady in the country with the star still on, but walking with the food. And he got out of the car and kissed her, and he said, did you have my Schutzpass? And the old lady said, yes. He said, so my work wasn't in vain. Wow. So for him too, it must have been a fantastic feeling that he did save people. I sometimes say he didn't save me because somehow my fiancé started it. And that's why I don't know. But the thing is that so many other people got involved and he helped them. And why are those people who helped are not coming up to talk? I have heard many times. We have a huge Hungarian Jewish Congress, and most of the people are doctors and lawyers and physicians and whatever, rich people who all became somebody because Raoul let them come. And I had my very first benefit concert for Raoul, Andras Schiff, the wonderful pianist played. They didn't come, not one of them. They first asked me, what is there in Israel? And I said, nothing. If I want to do something for Israel, then we give that. This is strictly for Raoul. Not one of those Hungarians who were saved came.
Agnes, do you think that being grateful makes people uncomfortable?
Unfortunately, yes, and I don't know why.
I know it would be more uncomfortable not to be alive, I would think.
I know one thing, that Raoul wouldn't like anybody ever to kiss his hands or to say he was a saint. Because as I said, he wasn't. He was a wonderful, funny, life-loving person who would have given everything in the world if he could have had children. Children was his life.
Yes.
And for this man, this brother and friend of ours, has to be in life for 44 years for all this good he has done to people. But I sometimes have this funny feeling that he is there, but that he's helping people. Because there is one little man we met not so long ago who just came out of a Russian prison. And he was with Raoul.
Yes, the one who had a daughter in Israel, the man.
No, not that one. It's
Oh.
another one, just a few weeks ago. And he said, I forgot his name because he doesn't like to talk, but he said, Agnes, he had a piece of bread that he gave me in a hand. Who else would do that but Raoul?
Yes.
So he will be hungry. doesn't matter. It is, but I can bring him out, and we can do more than all the children are writing letters to Gorbachev. He doesn't answer. Nina wrote to Gorbachev. He doesn't answer. So watch out. What is that?
Well, we can make sure people don't forget that name.
But that's all I want, because that's all we can do.
Yes.
There are a lot of things I don't like. I don't like to make big money out of this, because I don't think Raoul would have ever loved that. And people do that. It goes in their own pocket because they can say Raoul Wallenberg's name. And I don't like it. Just not so long ago, somebody wrote us, and I think maybe you got the letter. They want to erect a statue in California, and they want $150,000. I mean, there are thousands of American and Swedish culture who would do this gladly out of their heart.
Yes.
But do we have to pay an Italian sculpture for making it? That's not going to the man's pocket. It goes to the business people who have that. We don't need it.
Yes. We have to be careful so that what we do is really to honor him and to be
And the
in
only way
spirit.
we can do it to teach the children. And they proud.
Yes, they understand.
And I went to the Wallenberg school because they're very lucky that fifth graders can already go out and go into junior high school. And these fifth graders, they knew me since there is a Wallenberg school. This is 5 years now. And they always hear my story. And I just got a little notice on one of the papers that Raoul's brother was in Israel, and he said, Raoul is alive, but I'm not allowed to tell you how I know it and where he is. Evidently he's in a Moscow prison for senior citizen prisoners. And he's exercising, and he's fine, except Parkinson's disease, but only his hands are shaking. And I thought to myself, always we have secrets. Why? I know what I'm going to give these children as a present for graduation. And after I gave out the 5 awards, I said, all right, kids, now I'm going to give you a big, big graduation present. It might get sour again, but the present is yours. And I told them, the kids were absolutely screaming. And one little boy got up, he says, now, Miss Adachi, I can go out and do even more for Raoul Wallenberg and for everyone else. That was my present.
There. They appreciate it.
And they're going into junior high school, and they will teach the other children. It's very seldom now that you see somebody, Wallenberg, who? You begin to know, oh, Wallenberg, I know.
Yes, the
A
recognition.
couple of years ago, nobody knew who is Wallenberg. And they come up with these stories, give out visas. He did. He was a diplomat. He wasn't. He was, overnight he became a diplomat like I became overnight a Swede. Or I became overnight a Romanian. The one thing I didn't do, I didn't marry my Swedish fiancé. And that was quite a story too, because when I arrived to Stockholm, he greeted me like this, and I said, what's this? And he said, oh, you don't know? I said, no. He says, but the communist treaty. And my stomach went, oops, down.
Yeah.
And then next day I went up to see Danielson and Ambassador. He was an ambassador then. And I said, now I am here, and now I'm supposed to get married. I know. That's why you brought me out. And I know I have to give you all the money back. And I started to cry, first time, and I told them the story. And they said to me not to worry, they will find out. And they found out that he is the top communist of Sweden.
Oh, Agnes, how ironic.
Yes. And I said, do I have to marry him? And they said, no. But he saved my life.
Yes, thank goodness. I'm very glad.
But that too is in my book.
Yes.
How?
Now, what is the
Why they
title
saw
of your
it.
book?
Child of the Winds.
Child of the Wind.
And it has a subtitle. It says, My Mission with Raoul.
Excellent. We will look for it when it arrives on
And
printed.
my little
printed
children books, I wrote one tiny little story of a Raoul, not Raoul Wallenberg, but it's a Raoul. And that is Wise Raoul.
Good. Thank you very much, Agnes, for sharing all this with us. It's totally overwhelming.
It's always such a pleasure to
in Sweden for 3 years. And when I got there in 45, I was already in October 45 in Sweden. I fast, the war was over in May, right? And I was there in October. And everybody was learning Russian. And the children, like here you say, if you're naughty, I tell your father. I said, if you're naughty, I give you to the Russians. That frightened was Sweden from the Soviets. So to bring up Raoul Wallenberg, I mean, it would have been a tragedy.
I'll read the book. Okay.
But I don't know if either one of them had enough information. This is the first time that somebody really told the truth. What they did wrong, what we did wrong, what everybody did wrong. Look, I tell you, it was so bad. When I got in October, I got to Switzerland. September I was in Switzerland. I have an enormously big family living in Switzerland, very prominent people. And this was such a beautiful story about Raoul Wallenberg. I thought instead of Holocaust for everybody who came and they didn't want to hear about it. Yeah. It was a country that was not in the war. They were not interested what happened to the people in the gas chambers and survived. But I thought in this story they have to be interested because Raoul Wallenberg it's a legend, it's beautiful. And my uncle, who is a Russian descent, turned to my aunt when they didn't know I hear, and he said, you better take the child to a psychiatrist. She's lying through the teeth. She's sick. And I stopped talking. I went to newspaper people. I said, you must be interested. They laughed in my ass. So I did the same mistake as everybody else. I shut up about Raoul Wallenberg. I didn't talk because nobody wanted to listen. I started to write about it, but I thought, what's the use? Nobody did this. And finally in Sweden I got a great job because there was another great Swede who was killed, that was Count Bernadotte, who went to Auschwitz and Dachau and everywhere, and he picked up his people and brought them into Sweden. And they opened sanatoriums, military places they redone for these people to rehabilitate them. And it was wonderful, but what they needed is somebody to go into these camps and speak their language and talk about Sweden, Swedish literature, that I knew nothing about. But it was a terribly wonderful job, and I had to speak French and German and Hungarian. And I asked the government, would they allow me to speak to the Hungarians about Raoul Wallenberg? But they said yes. That was the only time I could talk, because I figured some of these Hungarians, maybe their family was saved by Raoul, even if they were taken. And I thought they have to know. And then these same people turned communist. Because one day I came home and my boss said, you can't go back to the camps anymore. And I said, I can't, this is Sweden. He said, you were talking anti-communist. I didn't. I said, but I told the Hungarians, they asked me, shall we go home? And I answered, you are all very sick. And my mother writes me from Hungary that there is no food. So please wait till you're healthy and then go home. And that was my anti-communist speech. It took them a month to find out from all the directors that... And anyways, that much they were afraid from the Soviets. You couldn't say anything. Everything was anti-communist. It was very hard. And for years and years I did not talk about Raoul, but it was always here. And it's always in my heart. And I couldn't, and finally I went to Australia, and then I lived there for 3 years, and then finally I got here. And I got here, the quarter was, Hungarian quarter was closed. And somehow they found out by that time that I worked with Raoul Wallenberg, and instead of 10 years, I got my visa for 6 years, and I could come to the United States. And here too, nobody talked. And then finally I got married in 1960 to a wonderful Japanese doctor, and we went on honeymoon to Europe, and I took him to Sweden, and I told him the story. The poor man was crying for 3 weeks, but he was the first one who believed, and he is still the man who is behind me, and he pushes, and he is doing everything, and he is a Wallenberg himself. He's going to get a Nobel Prize soon, I hope. But it is that difficult. And only in 1979, finally, Congressman Lantos, what is a very interesting thing, this young lady, not young lady anymore, who is his wife, was my first English pupil in Budapest. She was about 7-year-old and looked like Shirley Temple. And we were already forbidden to talk English that time, and we walked on the street speaking good, hot, loud English in the middle of the street. Nobody dared to come up to us because we didn't look like we were Hungarians or Jews. We were just two English-speaking individuals. And we have never met again, and I know that Annette was taken later on to Turkey, but her husband, Congressman Lantos, was still in high school, and she was a messenger boy for Raoul. And he got out here, and I knew him when he was a little boy because this Annette Lantos is the cousin of the Gabor girls. They were Gabor girls. And one of the Gabor girls, Eva, the youngest one, got married in her house. And Lantos was there, and I was there. So we didn't see each other for 40 years, and suddenly I worked in a school as a librarian, and one of the teachers asked me about my life, and I talked about Raoul Wallenberg and how we got here. Next day she comes in and said, look what's in the newspaper. And there is my story in there, and it says Lantos. I had no idea at that time who could be Lantos. And he talked about it that please, anyone who knows any who worked or been saved by Raoul Wallenberg would then contact Annette Lantos, and gives the California address. But I found out that President Carter gave them a free telephone to make phone calls. President Carter did everything was possible to find Raoul. Nobody ever thanked him for anything. He brought the Jews and the Arabs together, and nobody gave him the Nobel Prize, but other people got it. So he was quite a good man. But what happened, I was so excited about it. I took it home to my husband and said, finally, somebody's talking about Raoul. And then we went on vacation, and there was an admiral who just died, Admiral Eccles, wonderful, wonderful gentleman who was my great friend, and he knew about the story. And when I saw this, he says, come child, because Moynihan's name was in it. That he was living. And he said, let's write to them immediately. So he said, don't say too much, just say that you were a helper of Raoul and you would like to have more information. And we did that. And for 6 months, I said not one word, anything. I couldn't understand. I'm looking for people, and here is somebody who worked with Raoul, and nobody answers. So finally, I got a newsletter from them. And I was terribly shocked because it said Raoul Wallenberg to save people after 1945. And I said, how can they make that mistake? 1945, the war was over. So I dialed the number and called California, and Annette Lantos answers. And I tell her that I worked with Raoul Wallenberg, and I wrote you people 6 months ago. Oh my God, we didn't know. I said, but how come you didn't know? I mean, how many people write you that I worked with Raoul Wallenberg and you are not interested? Oh yes, but we were so busy. And then I tell her about the mistake. And she said, well, that's not such a big deal. I said, what do you mean it's not such a big deal? You send these out to 100,000 people, and they think that after the war, Raoul Wallenberg did something. It was in the war, and you should write it. Anyhow, I said, young lady, tell me, how did you got involved with finding Raoul Wallenberg? So she tells me, she said, oh, you see, my father was a great philanthropist, and he was killed by the Nazis. And then I heard about Raoul, and I really wanted to know. And I said, well, what is your name? What was your name? And then she told me her father's name. I almost dropped the phone. I said, well, your name is not Annette? So she said, well, yes. I said, no, your name is Aggie, like me. Same name. She said, well, who are you? I said, I'm your English teacher. By the time she almost dropped that phone. So that's more is the word. And that's the story. You want anything else? Question?
Keep it up.
Yes.
Is Ellie Weasel involved in,
Who?
Ellie Weasel?
No.
At all? Weasel?
He is like Mr. Kissinger. You see, we approached him. As a matter of fact, I had a youth Wallenberg committee in Forest Hills, and the kids went to the university where he teach. And they asked him to please call me to come and lecture, and his answer was, I know as much as she does about Raoul Wallenberg.